When her son was just 40 days old, an old man held him in the temple and turned to the young mother and spoke a prophecy that would define the rest of her life. "A sword," he said, "will pierce through your own soul also." A sword through her soul. Spoken over a girl barely 15 years old, holding her newborn baby. She did not yet understand what it meant, but she would. Over the course of her life, that sword would pierce her, not once, but again and again and again. For 2,000 years, Christians have remembered 7 of those piercings. 7 moments when the heart of the mother of Jesus was broken. They are called the 7 sorrows of Mary. And together, they tell the story of her life, not through its triumphs, but through its grief. Because we often picture Mary as serene, peaceful, untouched. But the real Mary was a woman who suffered more than almost anyone who ever lived. She was a refugee. She lost her child. She watched him tortured to death. And she did it all while holding on, somehow, to faith. In this video, we are going to walk through all 7 of those sorrows, one by one. We are going to feel each sword as she felt it. From the first prophecy in the temple to the moment she laid her son's body in the tomb. 7 swords. 7 moments that pierced the heart of the most faithful woman who ever lived. And as we walk through them, something will become clear that changes how you see her forever. These 7 sorrows are not random tragedies that happen to fall on one unlucky woman. Together, they trace the entire shape of her life, from the cradle of her son to his grave. They are the story of what it cost to be the mother of the Messiah. Every great calling has a price. Mary's calling was the highest any human being was ever given, to bear and raise the Son of God. And the price of that calling was these 7 swords. She paid that price willingly. She knew from the very first sorrow that suffering was coming. And she said yes anyway. She bore each sword as it came, and she never let any of them break her faith. That is what makes her not just the most sorrowful mother in history, but the most faithful one. And it begins, as her grief began, in the temple in Jerusalem, with an old man, a baby, and a prophecy no mother ever wants to hear. 40 days after Jesus was born, the law required a mother to present her firstborn son at the temple. So Mary and Joseph made the short journey from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, carrying their newborn, and, because they were poor, carrying the offering of the poor, 2 small doves, because they could not afford a lamb. Mary was perhaps 15 years old. She was a new mother, full of the fierce joy and exhaustion of those first weeks. She had been told by an angel that her son was the Son of God. She had heard shepherds say angels announced his birth. Everything, so far, had been wonder. And then an old man approached. His name was Simeon. The gospel says he was a righteous and devout man, and that the Holy Spirit had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Messiah with his own eyes. He had been waiting his whole long life for this moment. And when Mary's family walked in, the Spirit told him, "This is the one." He took the baby into his arms, and he praised God with words of pure joy. "My eyes have seen your salvation." For a moment, it was all light and wonder. And then Simeon turned to the young mother, and the joy in his face shadowed into something graver. And he spoke directly to her, not to Joseph, to her. "This child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that is opposed, and a sword will pierce through your own soul also." Imagine being that young mother. You are holding your 40-day-old baby. You are full of new mother love. And a holy man, a man who hears from God, looks you in the eye and tells you that this child will break your heart. that a sword is coming for your very soul. This is the first sorrow, not a present grief, but a promised one, a shadow laid across the cradle. From this day forward, Mary carried a knowledge no mother should have to carry, that her beloved child was destined for suffering, and that his suffering would pierce her own heart. She did not know how, she did not know when, but she knew it was coming. And the gospel tells us what she did with it, what she did with every difficult thing in her life. She did not run from it. She kept it. She treasured it in her heart and carried it for the next 33 years. And understand what that meant day to day, because it is the foundation of all the sorrows that follow. From this moment, Mary lived with a knowledge most parents are mercifully spared. Every parent fears, in some hidden corner of the heart, that something could happen to their child. But Mary did not merely fear it. She had been told it by a holy man in the holiest place with the authority of God. She knew her son was destined for suffering, and that his suffering would pierce her own soul. Imagine raising a child you love more than your own life, while carrying that certain knowledge. Every milestone, his first steps, his first words, his growing into a boy and then a man, touched by that shadow. Every joy carrying underneath it, the quiet ache of what was coming. And yet, she did not pull away from the child to protect her own heart. She loved him fully, completely, knowing all the while what it would cost her. That is the courage the first sorrow reveals. The courage to love completely, even knowing that love will one day break you. That is the first sword, and it would not be the last. The second came soon after, in the dead of night, with soldiers on the way, and a desperate flight across a desert. Wise men from the east had come looking for the newborn King of the Jews. And their question had reached the ears of the most dangerous man in the land, King Herod the Great. Paranoid, brutal, and dying, Herod could not tolerate a rival king. And so he made a decision of monstrous cruelty. He would kill every male child under the age of 2 in and around Bethlehem. But God warned Joseph in a dream. "Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Imagine the terror of that night for Mary. Woken in the dark, told that soldiers were coming to kill her baby. No time to prepare, no time to say goodbye. Just gather the child and run into the night, toward a foreign country, across a desert. This is the second sorrow, the sword of a mother's terror, the specific primal fear of a parent whose child is hunted. Every instinct in her body was to protect this baby, and the most powerful man in the land wanted him dead. And so the Mother of God became a refugee, fleeing for her child's life. They crossed roughly 250 miles of desert to reach Egypt, a foreign land, where she did not speak the language, had no family, no home, no standing. A teenage mother and a newborn and an old carpenter, strangers in a strange land, in exile. Think of what those years took from her. The constant fear, the loneliness of exile, the grinding uncertainty. When would it be safe to go home? Would it ever be? She raised her baby's earliest years not in the warmth of her own village among her own people, but as a frightened immigrant in a foreign land. And back in Bethlehem, the unthinkable happened. Herod's soldiers came and carried out his order. The Gospel of Matthew records the horror with a quotation from the prophet Jeremiah. "A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be comforted because they are no more." Mary's child had been spared, but she would have known soon enough the terrible price. Other mothers' children had died in her son's place. The sword of that knowledge, that her baby lived while others were slaughtered, is part of this second sorrow too. And then, at last, the news. Herod was dead. It was safe to return. But the sword of exile had pierced her deeply. She had spent her son's earliest years as a hunted refugee. And the next sword would come not from a king, but from a far quieter and more familiar terror. The terror of a lost child. And there is a deeper echo in this second sorrow that the early Christians never forgot. Egypt was the land their ancestors had fled from centuries before, in the great Exodus under Moses. Once, God had led his people out of Egypt to freedom. Now, to protect the child who would set them free in a greater way, God sent the Holy Family into Egypt for refuge. A teenage mother, walking that ancient road with a baby on her hip, was unknowingly retracing the deepest patterns of her people's story. The sword of exile she carried was woven into the long sorrow and hope of her entire nation. Years passed. The family had returned to Nazareth and settled into ordinary life. And every year, as devout Jews did, they traveled to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. When Jesus was 12 years old, they made the journey as always. And on the way home, traveling in a large company of relatives and neighbors, a parent's worst nightmare unfolded. Mary and Joseph realized that Jesus was not with them. Luke tells us they had traveled a full day before they noticed. They had assumed he was somewhere in the large group, with cousins, with friends. He was 12, old enough to travel among the company. But he was not there. Any parent who has ever lost sight of a child, even for a few minutes, knows the cold terror that grips the heart in that instant. Now multiply it. Their son was missing, and they were already a full day's journey away, in a world with no way to call ahead, no way to search but on foot. This is the third sorrow, the sword of a lost child. They turned back, and they searched the vast, crowded, dangerous city of Jerusalem for 3 days. 3 days of escalating terror, going street by street, market by market, fearing the worst. Think about those 3 days. 3 days of a mother imagining every terrible possibility. 3 days of barely sleeping, barely eating, walking until her feet bled, calling her son's name into an indifferent crowd. The sword of those 3 days was the agony of not knowing, the worst torture a parent's heart can endure. And there is something the early Christians always noticed about these particular 3 days. Years later, there would be another 3 days. 3 days when her son lay in a tomb, lost to her again before he was found alive. This loss, when he was 12, was a kind of rehearsal in miniature for the deepest sorrow still to come. 3 days of loss, and then a finding. She did not know that yet, but the pattern was already being written. And finally, on the third day, they found him in the temple, sitting calmly among the great teachers of the law, listening and asking questions, astonishing everyone with his understanding. And Mary, in the rush of relief and exhausted frustration that every parent knows, said, "Son, why have you treated us so? Your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." And he answered with the first recorded words of his life, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" Luke tells us they did not understand what he meant. Even now, the sword had a strange edge to it. The dawning realization that her son belonged to a father greater than Joseph, to a purpose she could not fully grasp. She found her child, but she also glimpsed again that he was never entirely hers. And once more, she treasured it all in her heart. And there is a particular weight to this third sorrow that every parent eventually feels, even if they never lose a child for 3 days in a city. Because the deepest fear underneath the lost child is not only, is he safe? It is also the slow, aching realization that your child is becoming his own person, that he belongs to a future, a calling, a world beyond you. Mary searched for her little boy, and she found instead a young man already turning toward a destiny she could not follow him into. The sword of the third sorrow is the sword every parent knows. The child you would give your life to protect is, inch by inch, walking a road that is his own and not yours. We now leap forward more than 20 years, past the hidden years of Nazareth, past the death of Joseph, past the 3 years of her son's ministry, to the most terrible day of Mary's life. Her son had been betrayed, arrested in the night, condemned in a series of trials, and sentenced to die by crucifixion. And now he was being driven through the streets of Jerusalem, carrying the heavy wooden beam of his own cross toward the hill where he would be killed. And his mother was in that city. She had come for the Passover, as she did every year, and now she found herself in the worst place a mother can be, somewhere along the route to her son's execution. This is the fourth sorrow. And tradition has held for centuries that somewhere along that terrible road, mother and son met. That through the chaos and the soldiers and the jeering crowd, their eyes found each other. One last look between a mother and her child before the end. Imagine that look. Everything passed between them in it. All the years. The cave in Bethlehem, the flight into Egypt, the lost child in the temple, the 30 quiet years in Nazareth, the bread she baked, the prayers she taught, the trade he learned. And now, this, her son, beaten, bleeding, carrying the instrument of his own death on his way to die. And there was nothing she could do. Nothing. That is the particular sword of the fourth sorrow. Not just grief, but utter helplessness. Every fiber of a mother's being exists to protect her child. And Mary could do nothing but watch him be driven toward death and meet his eyes and let him see that she was there. Perhaps that is what she could give him. The one thing left. Her presence, her face in the crowd. The knowledge that, in the worst hour of his life, his mother had not abandoned him. That she was there, walking the same terrible road, refusing to look away. She could not carry his cross. She could not stop the soldiers. She could not change what was coming. But she could be there, and she would be. All the way to the hill, all the way to the end. The fifth sorrow was waiting for her there, at the foot of the cross. And there is something in this fourth sorrow that speaks to a grief many people carry quietly. It is the grief of the helpless witness, the parent at the hospital bedside who can do nothing but watch, the family member who must stand by while someone they love walks a road of suffering they cannot take from them. We so often think love means fixing, saving, protecting. But sometimes love can do none of those things. Sometimes love can only stay, only witness, only refuse to look away. That is what Mary gave her son on the road to Calvary. Not rescue, she had no power to rescue him. She gave him the one thing she still could, her presence, her face in the crowd, the knowledge that in the worst hour of his life, he was not alone, because his mother was there, walking the same terrible road. Sometimes that is the only gift love can give, and it is not a small one. And so Mary came to the hill called Calvary, and she did the thing that defines her more than any other. While most of her son's followers had fled and hidden, terrified for their own lives, his mother walked to the very foot of the cross, and she stayed, The Gospel of John names exactly who stood there. Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. His mother, first on the list. She stayed for the hours it took. She did not look away. This is the fifth sorrow, the deepest sort of all. To stand and watch your own child die, slowly, in agony, in public, stripped and mocked, and to be utterly unable to help him. There is no grief on earth deeper than a parent watching their child die. And Mary endured the very worst form of it, for hours, at the foot of a Roman cross. This was the sword Simeon had named, 33 years earlier, in the temple, when her son was just 40 days old. A sword will pierce through your own soul. For 3 decades she had carried that warning. And now it had arrived in full, and it went all the way through her heart. What does a mother see watching her child die? Not a theological event, not in that moment, the salvation of the world. She sees her boy. She saw the baby from the manger, the toddler she carried across the desert into Egypt, the 12-year-old in the temple, the young man who left home one morning, every age of him at once, ending before her eyes. And remember everything that had led her to this exact hill. Trace it. The same woman standing at the foot of this cross was once a 3-year-old child climbing the temple steps, less than a mile from here. She was the teenager who said yes to an angel in Nazareth. She was the refugee who carried this man as a baby across the desert to save his life from another king who wanted him dead. She had spent 33 years protecting him, feeding him, teaching him, loving him. And every mile of that long road had led to this. To standing helpless beneath a Roman cross, watching the empire kill her son a short walk from where she had first presented him to God. And the cruelty of crucifixion was that it was slow. This was not a quick death. The Romans designed it to take hours, to be as prolonged and public and humiliating as possible. So Mary did not watch her son die in a moment. She watched it happen slowly, over hours, in the heat and the dark, as the crowds mocked and the soldiers gambled for his clothing. Hour after hour, she stood there and watched, and could do nothing but be present to every minute of it. And then, in the middle of his agony, her son did one last thing for her. He looked down from the cross and saw his mother, and saw the disciple John standing beside her, and he spoke. "Woman, behold your son." And to John, "Behold your mother." Even while dying, even in unimaginable pain, her son was thinking of her, making sure she would be cared for. In that world, a widow with her only son dying had nothing, no one to provide for her. And so, with some of his last breaths, he gave her a new son. John, the Gospel says, took her into his own home from that hour. It was the last gift her son ever gave her from the cross, the assurance that she would not be left alone. And then the sky went dark, and her son cried out and breathed his last. The mother who had been there for his first breath in a cave in Bethlehem was there for his last breath on a hill outside Jerusalem. She had watched him die. The fifth sword had gone all the way through. And we should pause and honor what it cost her simply to be there. It would have been easier to look away, more bearable to stay back, to be spared the sight of it. No one would have blamed a mother who could not watch her child die in that way. Most of his closest followers were not there. Fear or grief or both kept them away. But Mary came. She chose to see it. She chose to witness every hour of her son's suffering, because the only alternative, letting him die without his mother near, was something she could not do. If he had to endure it, she would endure being there for it. That is the deepest meaning of the fifth sorrow. Not just that she grieved, though she did, more than any human heart should have to, but that her love was stronger than her need to protect herself from pain. She stayed in the place of greatest agony, simply because he was hers and she loved him. There is no fiercer love than that. He was dead. And now came the terrible, tender work of taking his body down. A wealthy man named Joseph of Arimathea had gone with great courage to ask the Roman governor for the body. And with Nicodemus, he came to take Jesus down from the cross, to do the work of burial before the Sabbath began at sunset. And tradition has held for 2,000 years that they placed the body of Jesus into the arms of his mother. This is the sixth sorrow, and it carries a grief almost too tender to speak of, because think of the terrible symmetry of this moment. The first time Mary held this body, it was a newborn, soft, warm, wrapped in cloths, laid against her chest in a cave in Bethlehem. And now, at the end, she held that same body again, no longer a baby, a grown man, wrapped now not in swaddling cloths, but in the cloths of death. Her arms had held him at the beginning, and her arms held him at the end. The same arms, the same love. She had brought him into the world, and now she held him as he left it. No mother should ever have to hold her child this way. And Mary held him one last time with the same tenderness she had shown him as a baby, washing the blood and the dust from him, the way she had washed him as a newborn, preparing him now not for life, but for the grave. There is a love here that has moved artists and believers for centuries. The image of the grieving mother holding her dead son, because it speaks to the deepest grief any parent can know, and to the fiercest love. Even in death, she would not abandon him. She would do this last act of care herself. She would hold him one final time, and then she had to let him go, because the Sabbath was coming, and the burial could not wait. She had to release the body she had held at the beginning and the end of his life, and let them carry him to the tomb. The seventh and final sword was about to fall. But sit one more moment in the sixth sorrow, because there is a tenderness in it that has moved the human heart for 2,000 years. For 33 years, Mary's hands had cared for this body. Those hands had wrapped him as a newborn. They had washed him, fed him, held him when he cried, bandaged his childhood scrapes, smoothed his hair. A mother's hands know every inch of her child. And now those same hands performed their last act of care, cleaning the wounds, smoothing the linen, preparing for burial the body she had brought into the world. There is no image in all of Christian history that has been painted, sculpted, and wept over more than this one. The grieving mother holding the body of her dead son, because it holds, in a single image, the deepest grief a human being can know and the fiercest love. Even in death, she would not hand him to strangers. She would do this herself. She would hold him one last time. The seventh sorrow is the burial, the final sword. The moment Mary watched her son's body sealed inside a tomb, and a great stone rolled across the entrance. There was no time to do it properly. The Sabbath was minutes away, and once it began, no work could be done. The body could not even be touched. So in a terrible rush against the setting sun, they wrapped the body with what spices they had and laid it on the cold stone shelf of the borrowed tomb. And the Gospels record a small, heartbreaking detail. The women watched exactly where he was laid. They memorized the place because they intended to come back after the Sabbath to finish the burial properly, to give his body the full, loving care the rush had not allowed. And then the stone was rolled across the entrance, a great wheel of rock, sealing the tomb the light inside went out. And on the other side of that stone stood a mother who had just sealed her son in a grave. This is the seventh sorrow, the sword of finality, of the stone rolled shut, of walking away from the grave of your child into a world that will never be the same. It is the loneliest sword of all, because it is the one that says, it is over. He is gone. There is nothing left to do but grieve. Imagine her walking away from that tomb in the last gray light of Friday, supported by John, surrounded by the other women, every step taking her further from the body of her son, the sun setting on the worst day of her life, the Sabbath beginning, a holy day she would have to keep in the depths of a grief beyond words. And here is the cruelest edge of the seventh sorrow. Because the Sabbath now began, Jewish law forbade all work, including the care of the dead. So Mary could not even tend to her son's body properly. The burial had been done in a desperate rush against the setting sun. The women longed to return and finish it with the proper spices and care. But they could not. Not for a full day. The law required them to stop, to rest, to keep the holy day, while the body of her son lay alone in a sealed tomb, and a mother's arms ached to care for him one last time. And she was forbidden even that. So the seventh sorrow was not only the sealed stone, it was the long, helpless, silent day that followed. A whole Sabbath of grief with nothing to do, nowhere to go, no way to be near him. Just the waiting. The terrible, empty waiting of a mother whose child lies in the grave. 7 swords, 7 sorrows. From the prophecy over a 40-day-old baby to the stone rolled across a tomb, across a whole lifetime. The sword that Simeon foretold had pierced her again and again. And now, at the tomb, it had gone all the way through. And yet, and this is the most important thing of all, through every one of those 7 swords, Mary never let go of her faith. She grieved, she suffered, she wept, but she never stopped trusting the God who had asked so much of her. The same girl who said, "Let it be to me according to your word," kept saying it through every sorrow, all the way to the tomb. Think about what that actually means. By the 7th sorrow, Mary had every earthly reason to abandon her faith. God had promised her, through an angel, that her son would reign over a kingdom with no end. And now that son lay dead in a borrowed tomb, executed as a criminal, his followers scattered and hiding. Every visible sign said the promise had failed, that God had not kept his word, that she had given her whole life to something that had ended in a sealed grave. And still, she did not curse God. She did not declare it all a lie. She held on in the dark, with no proof, to the God who had asked everything of her. That is perhaps the greatest of all her sorrows, the greatest of all her strengths, that she kept faith even when faith made no sense, even standing at the grave of her son with every promise apparently broken. But the 7 sorrows are not the end of the story, because 3 days after that stone was rolled shut, it was rolled away. The tomb was found empty, and the grief of the 7th sorrow was swallowed up in a joy beyond all telling. The same mother who endured 7 swords lived to see her son alive again. The grief was real, every sword of it. But it was not the final word. The God who had asked Mary to bear so much sorrow did not abandon her in it. On the 3rd day, he turned her deepest grief into her greatest joy. And that is why the 7 sorrows have meant so much to so many. For so long. Because they show us a woman who suffered everything a human heart can suffer. Fear, exile, loss, helplessness, watching her child die, holding his body, sealing his grave. And who came through it all, with her faith unbroken. Every person who has ever suffered, every parent who has buried a child, every soul who has watched someone they love suffer and been helpless to stop it, every heart that has been pierced by grief has a companion in Mary. She is not a distant, serene icon who never knew pain. She is a mother who was pierced by 7 swords and who understands grief from the inside because she lived all of it. She shows us that you can grieve fully and still believe, that the sword can pierce your soul and not destroy your faith. That sorrow, however deep, is not the end of the story, because the same God who let the 7 swords fall also rolled the stone away. And notice the shape of her whole life one more time. 7 sorrows, but not 7 defeats. Each sword pierced her, and each time she kept her faith and kept going. The prophecy did not stop her from loving her son completely. The flight into Egypt did not stop her from making a home in exile. The lost child did not stop her from trusting the mystery. The road to Calvary did not stop her from staying. The cross did not stop her from being present. The body in her arms did not stop her from caring for him one last time. And the sealed tomb did not stop her from believing. 7 swords, and a faith that bent under every one of them, but never broke. 7 swords, 7 sorrows, 1 faithful heart that bore them all and was not broken. And perhaps that is the truest reason the world has never stopped loving her. Not because she was spared suffering, she was not. She suffered as deeply as any mother ever has. But because in all that suffering, she shows us that grief and faith can live in the same heart. That you can be pierced again and again and still hold on. That the deepest sorrow imaginable does not have to be the end of your story or the end of your faith. Mary walked through 7 swords and came out the other side still believing, and then watched her grief turn to a joy that has echoed for 2,000 years. If these 7 sorrows moved you, subscribe. We tell the deep human stories behind the figures everyone thinks they already know. Tell me in the comments which of the 7 swords pierced your heart the most. The prophecy over the baby? The flight into Egypt? The lost child? The road to Calvary? The cross? The body in her arms? Or the sealed tomb? I read every comment. Thank you for walking the 7 sorrows with me. I'll see you in the next one.